I just want to know that I know, and I know that the knowing will grow. So long as I know that the knowing is growing, and knowing this onward I go, then by all the gods let it be so. So long as I know that I know. Hello, everybody. It is 3:16 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of December, in the year 2022, and my mustache is itchy. I just got back from a run. I went down to the Rialto River Park and I ran in the dry riverbed. Dry-ish. Mostly dry. It was a little moist here and there, but it was mostly dry. And it slowed me down quite a bit to run in the sand, in the silt. But it was fun. It was nice. It was naturey. It was beautiful out there. I then need to find more places to run like that. And my knee's been hurting, and I felt like, gee, my knee hurts, and I run 3 or 4 times a week, mostly on concrete and pavement. So maybe I should find somewhere softer. And so we'll see. Hopefully that helps. I've not meditated today. Maybe I'm failing you in that. Maybe my message won't be as clear. But actually, I feel pretty good. I did sit for a moment, like not in an official. Official's not the right word. What's not official, not traditional, formal, and not in a formal meditation. But I did sit for a minute and allow my spirit to sort of rise to the occasion until I knew that I wanted to do this video. And running is not meditation, but it's not thinking either. And the point of meditating, to me at least, is not so much to meditate as it is to stop thinking or to transcend thinking. Um, they say that there are no problems in the world, only thinking makes it so. And yet, thinking is in the world. And so, if only thinking makes problems and there are no problems in the world, thinking can't be a problem because it is, in fact, in the world. Um, but you can certainly think that thinking is a problem. And when you think that your thinking is a problem, sometimes it's a good to use some type of method to stop thinking. Meditation is a great way to do that, but running's a pretty decent way to do that too. Start making it hard to breathe, and all of a sudden I can't think about dumb stuff as much. It gets my attention. So I do like to go for a run. I have good insights and information, in my discursive mind um, seems to shut off for extended periods of time, which is nice. This is why people reach for drugs and alcohol a lot, is because there's nothing wrong with the thinking mind per se, but sometimes you just want a break from it. And so if you don't have a good way to get a break from your thoughts, drugs and alcohol will do in a pinch. And I'm certainly not anti-drug and alcohol. I'm anti-bad habits. I'm anti any habit that makes you not have the life that you want. Um, but if the life that you want includes drugs and alcohol, fine. As long as you're rigorously honest with yourself, you'll see whether or not the alcohol is giving you the life you want, or the drugs. I say drugs and alcohol. Alcohol is a drug. So might as well just say drugs. Giving you what you want, or whether it's costing you more than you want. And so it kind of brings me around to the topic that I wanted to talk about today. I don't want to be too rigid about topics. I kind of like to just see where the spirit takes me, see where the logos goes as it just sort of unfolds naturally. And I don't want to force this too much, but also I I did determine to just have a little bit of focus. And so whether or not I stick to the topic is anybody's guess, or how much time I spend on the topic, where the topic takes me, but I do at least have a topic. And the topic is basically intentionality versus impulsive living, um, planning versus winging it. rationale versus intuition. These are all sort of the topic, and I think that there's, as with most things, it's not really a versus. It's a spectrum. It's probably like, how much planning do you want to do, and how much do you want to live according to that plan? Because the answer is not zero. And then it's probably, how spontaneous and intuitive and impulsive do you want to be, and how much would you like to just do whatever the hell you feel like doing without a plan, or without strict adherence to a plan, because the answer is probably not zero. So probably there's room for both. I would think there's room for a good amount of planning, and there's a good room for a good amount of flexibility. And so the question um, the question becomes, how much of what? And I think the answer, as with many things, comes in how you feel. And so if you are winging along through your life, not making a plan, la 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 la, living for today, and taking no thought for the morrow, and toiling not, neither spinning, and being arrayed, like the lilies of the field, then great, fantastic. But if you don't really have any intentionality in your life, and you're just like letting the spirit move you, or that's your intention is to not have any intention, is to just what does God want me to do today? That'd be fantastic if you could pull it off. But if you're not happy, you do have. I mean, God did give you a brain. Um, I mean, unless you're somebody's pet who just happens to be watching this video because your owner is watching this video. So I'm not talking to any of the cats and dogs that happen to be watching this video because their human put it on. But if you're a human who found this video and put it on, then God gave you rationale. And when I say God, I'm not talking about a bald old man in the sky with sandals. Okay? Just the way that I look at the world, it doesn't make any sense to ask whether or not God exists. The question that makes sense is, what is it? What is God? Because there are certainly cultures that worship bears. There are cultures that worship the sun. The sun exists and bears exist. So their gods exist. So God exists in some form. One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it, but it seems to be one of the best ways to deal with a hardcore atheist, is, the God that you don't believe in doesn't exist. And I don't know if it's true or not exactly, but I really like the sound of it. And so that's more or less the way I think of it. So like, if you say that a certain God doesn't exist, okay, maybe it doesn't, but there's something more powerful than you. Okay? And so maybe God's a loaded word, but it's a term of convenience for me. And so like, there is a universe, and there is an order of magnitude in the universe, and there are things larger and more powerful than me. I have my own theory on what God is exactly, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, you didn't give yourself reason and rationality, unless you're a lot bigger than what you. If you identify as the divine in all things, then sure. But if we're talking about your small, unique individual self, the part of you that has a social security number, you didn't give yourself rationality and logic. So that came either from evolution, which makes the forces of nature the God in this sense, or it came from God, some sort of other type of God. It doesn't matter. The point is, you have reason. It doesn't matter whether God gave it to you or not, really. Now that I think about it, you have reason. The rest of it's a story. And you know how I feel about stories. So you do have reason and logic, and I'd be willing to believe that you have it for a reason. You have reason for a reason. Reason for a reason for a reason for a reason. And so if you are unhappy and you are not using your reason to leverage yourself into the best position possible, maybe try planning things a little bit more. Maybe you don't have enough intentionality in your life. It seems I do believe that humans are animals. I don't really believe in a separation between humans and animals. I think, you can start with the very low with, earthworms and clams and things that move mostly by instinct and are more predictable than computers and robots and mechanical. Clams are more predictable than mechanical devices. And you can look that up. I'm not going into it, but so you've got that on that end of the spectrum, and then you've got like cats and your smarter dogs and monkeys and things like that. And if you watch them, you can tell that they're thinking. Um, it's not so different from the way that we think and try to figure. Poke at something and then they'll sit back and look at it, and so and then you get to humans, and one of the biggest differences that we understand the language that we speak, and that we have a complex language, and we can communicate with each other, and we can pass down information from generation to generation. So I don't really believe that there's a true separation between man and beast, but to the degree that man and beast are separate, one of the things that seems to make us separate from at least the lower form of beast is our ability to reason, our concept of the future, um, and our ability to sort of sacrifice the present for the future. But so it's makes us greatly successful in a lot of ways, but it also seems to cause us a lot of suffering. And if you ate when you were hungry and drank when you were thirsty and slept when you were tired, like the beasts do, then you wouldn't suffer very much. Or when you did suffer, you'd get up and do something about it, and then eventually you die. That's the main problem, is that eventually you're gonna die if you do that. So if you go completely with how you feel, it seems to me. I've never had the balls to try it. Honestly, it crosses my mind every once in a while. What if you just didn't? What if you really took the words of Christ seriously when he said that the lilies don't toil or spin, and should take no thought for the morrow? Like literally just tomorrow. Like the evil of the day is sufficient, right? There's enough to do today without thinking about tomorrow. What if you took that very seriously and you didn't plan for the future at all, and you just did what felt good now, all of the time? I don't know. Like, I strongly suspect that I would either have the most amazing life you could imagine, or I would die. And I don't see something in the middle happening. So like, but that's the question. That's the question for today's video, and it's not so much. This isn't a lecture. None of these are intended to be lectures. So if they ever come off as lectures, that's because I've spent a lot of time thinking about these things, and so I already have sort of developed ideas. And I know that sometimes when I try to catch people up on the thinking I've already done, because you're not dumber than me, and I'm not dumber than you. We're both intelligent people, but you don't have the things that I've thought of, and I don't have the things that you've thought of. But I'm the one making the video. So if this was a conversation, it'd be different. But it's a video, and I'm sitting here, and so I try to catch the audience up on what I've already thought of, and so at least we can have the same sort of some of the same basis. And then after that, I just want to go where it takes me. And it would be nice for this to be a conversation actually between me and another person, but at the moment, I'm just trying to get the conversation going. And so yeah, this isn't intended to be a lecture. This is me sort of just taking a question, hopefully at the leading edge of my thought. I think this will be the most entertaining, is for me to take a question at the leading edge of my thought, and then to use you as a sort of sounding board and sort of develop the idea live and in person. Well, not really in person, live on camera, and we'll develop the idea. And so the idea that I want to work with today is intentionality versus intuition, and how much of these things do you want in your life. And yeah, I do think a good indicator of whether you're doing too much of one or the other is how do you feel. So, for example, at the moment, I don't have the best habits. My life's been a little chaotic lately, which is not bad or good. It's just the nature of my life at the moment. And so my schedule's been this, that, and the other thing. And so it's been difficult. Like none of my sort of pre cut routines have been working that well. And I've been sort of trying to develop different psychological muscles. I've been using this opportunity to like get better at being free, um, so that eventually when I'm completely on my own and I'm not depending on a company for a paycheck because I'm making my own money from my own enterprises, I will have the discipline that is required there, because you may not realize this if you've had a job your entire adult life, but like that's, you may hate the job, but the structure built in to a life with a 9 to 5 is holding you together to some degree. And so, not that you couldn't make it without your job if you had a different income source, but it's not just the money. The structure is um, something that you need. And so if you don't have your job, then you're going to have to figure out how to structure your own life, which is freedom, but it's also work. And so you got to figure this stuff out. And so this is why I'm thinking about intentionality and intuition. And so I think there are certain things that come into it, like vices. So one of the reasons why the intuition thing might be failing, if you do try to take those words seriously and just say, you know what, I'm gonna live in the hand of God, and I'm gonna allow, you know, spirit to guide me, and I'm gonna try this thing out. I'm gonna try living by faith instead of planning everything out and trying to control everything. I'm gonna try to surrender to whatever my idea of God or the divine or the universe or spirit or whatever. I'm gonna try to surrender to this and just like let things come as they come and take my guidance from the divine and move through life. One of the reasons why it might not work is because you move before you're sure. And so, one of my favorite things to say is that if one is uncertain, it is good to wait. So, why does that not work? So what is that? Okay, so before I say why that doesn't work sometimes, what does it mean? It means, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. If you're not certain, if you're sure what to do, then do it. And if you're not sure, if there's any part of you that goes, well, you know, I'd kind of like to do this and I'd kind of like to do this, then stop and just wait. You don't necessarily have to think about it. In fact, it might be counterproductive to think about it, but what you do is you just wait until you're sure. And so, a lot of us are not that good at waiting. And I'm a lot better at waiting than I used to be. I practice a lot. But you're waiting and you're like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then there's these handful of things that are just sort of go to. And it seems like, yeah, I've got this list of things that make sense to do: meditate, work out, you know, hygiene, these are the things that need to be done, you know, automate my to do list. But they're not as attractive as watching television or pouring myself a drink. So sometimes I'm uncertain. And then I go, okay, I'm uncertain, I'll wait. But I don't wait. Turning on Netflix is not waiting. That occupies your mind to the point where the answer is not going to come. You're engaged in something. So if you're waiting for the certainty and you're not certain, don't turn on Netflix. Don't pour yourself a drink. And obviously, I'm preaching to the choir here. It's not supposed to be a sermon. It's supposed to be me developing the idea live on camera. So that's one reason why it might not work, is because you think that you're waiting. I think that I'm waiting. I'm not. I'm turning on Netflix. I'm scrolling Facebook. I'm playing video game. I'm pouring myself a drink. I'm not actually waiting. So there's that. And then there's the question of habits and and intentionality and, you know, making a plan. that side of things, it won't work if you won't do it. And so you make a plan. Hmm. And for me, at least, the plans usually come up from inspiration. Like I finally get tired of whatever it is I've got going on. And then, like, all right, this is no good. Like, okay, I'm going to have to think, turn my brain back on, grab my notebook, and I sit down and I figure it out. I get myself in a pretty good feeling place. And I go, okay, I like this. I like to do this. I like to do this. I like to do this. Here's my week. Then, as I go on, sometimes the plan doesn't feel good anymore. Okay, so fine. So my values, I don't want to be so rigid that I have to stick to the plan. But what is it that I do when the plan fails? Am I going to reach for that vice? Or am I going to sit down with my notebook and replan? And I think that's where I'm at with it right now. Um, Intentionality is a big deal. So, like I talked about knowing what you want. And so, a lot of times, if you sit down with your notebook, for me, it's always the notebook. You sit down with your notebook and you figure out what you want. Great. Then, so I like to figure out what I want in several different resolutions. So, like, zoom way out. What do I want out of life? Okay, these are the things I'm trying to accomplish with my life. And then it's really, you just need that, and then you need what am I going to do right now. But sometimes I look at what I want to do for my life and I go, I don't know how to move towards that. Okay. Well, what do I want to do this month? Or something like that. So I can say big picture, this is what I want, and then maybe I don't know how to do that. So like, what's the next thing? And so sometimes it's very difficult to figure out what the next thing to do is if I don't know what I want to do with my life. So first figure out what you want to do with your life, then you figure out what you want to do next, maybe like in a like sort of medium long term, what do you want to do next? And then okay, so now that I see what I want to do next, now I can start to see short term, like what do I need to do in the next month or so? Okay, easy enough. And then like what do I need to do today? And so a lot of times it's like, well, the next thing I have to do is go to work. So that's easy enough because that's what keeps the money coming in. Okay, fine. So the next thing I have to do is go to work. That gives me this much time. What do I want to do in that time? And then you know what you want. At that point is when you make your plan. You make your plan out as far as it feels good to make it out. But just realize that anything other than now isn't truth. It isn't the fundamental nature of reality. It's a story about the future. And if you're just a hair off, the further out in the future, the less accurate it's going to be. As you move into the future, if your plan was a degree off from where you actually want to be, then the further out you get, the further away you get from what you're actually wanting to do. So it's okay to stray a little bit from your true purpose or whatever. But when you do, the more sensitive you are, the more you'll feel this is not right. And then at some point, you'll start to feel upset. And when you start to feel upset about your plan, that's when you should stop. And so this is why it's good to have like regular free time built into your plan so that you have these stops. So if I build a plan that's got free time in it every day, then every day I can sit down and I go, does this plan still make sense? And so, yeah, I guess that's all. I don't know. This felt like what I wanted to talk about, and I'm not sure how helpful it is, but it's the next thing that I needed, and I got to think that if anybody's watching my video, you've got to be at least on the same page with me a little bit. And so the idea is to make the plan, to have the goal, to make the plan, so that you can get back to living in the moment as quickly as possible. And you have the things that you absolutely have to do, and you give yourself as much freedom within the plan as you possibly can, and you get back to living for today. and trying to be happy, and you have your plan sort of as a servant, so that if you're like, gee, I don't, that's what one thing that happens to me is if I'm living in the moment, I start to have this sort of nagging anxiety that things are going to go wrong. And it is a lack of faith to some degree. It is, but it helps me to have a plan. And so I can look at the plan and be like, no, 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 everything's on schedule. And that's where the plan can be your servant. But if the plan becomes your master and it's like, no, I said I was going to do this at this time, but the house is on fire, well, you should probably leave. Like, you can't just strictly adhere to the plan if the house caught on fire. These things change. Nobody's predicted that. So, I think, at least for me, leaning towards a sort of winging it, like having goals but not really having plans very much, is what I want. Um, but the planning can be fun too. Anyways, it's when it starts to feel like the horror movie music is playing in your life, you should probably sit down with your notepad and figure out what's going on. And when it starts to feel like you're dead inside, you should probably like loosen up some of the rigidity of your plan. I guess that's where I'm at with it, and it's not a very strong message in one way or the other, but I really think that at least where I'm at this point in my life, the middle way seems to be the way to go when it comes to winging it versus planning. Like, plan as much as you have to and wing it as much as you can. But what do I know? I'm a trickster and a fool.